Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Kaleidoscope. We have some very interesting guests today, and I'm looking forward to chatting with them. But first, I want to remind everyone that we'll be on hiatus for July and August, and we'll back to see you in September. So now to our guests who are important to our town, but perhaps not as well known as they should be. So I'm going to give everyone a little hint who they are. I'm going to tell you a little joke, a dad joke. What kind of shoes does a frog wear? Open-toed sandals. Now, if you think that's funny, you will love the dad jokes that appear on a company that is right off of Route 9, who has become an important part of the community. And I'd like to welcome Kate and Patrick Tobiasson. I'm so glad to have you join us today and tell us a little bit more about how you're connected to those dad jokes to start off. Kate, do you want to take that? I know it's one of your favorite parts.
It's true. Well, first of all, thanks for having us here, Mary. We're really excited to have a chance to kind of share a little bit about our story and what we love about our life in Westborough. Mm-hmm. So we love to laugh. Patrick, when he was younger, thought that he was going to grow up and be a stand-up comedian. And he has a line that he always shares about his mom.
Yeah, my mother raised ugly kids, not stupid ones.
And I really wanted to kind of share some lighthearted, easy humor with people, and we have that great billboard on Route 9. So rather than posting tips about insurance, most of the stuff that we share is a good old dad joke, and I'm always looking for more, so thanks for sharing so many wonderful jokes with us, Mary. We appreciate you.
Yeah, it's a big surprise. People don't really want to talk about insurance. I don't understand why.
Yes, I think so. Well, first of all, you have an important insurance company that we really want to mention the name. So why don't you introduce the name of the company, and then we can go into the history of it, because
Sure.
I think that's fascinating.
Yep. So we're over at Dolan and Maloney Insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And we're an independent agency, been there since 1983, started by Kate's grandfather, actually. And Kate can run through that story much better than I can, as since I married into the family. But I got to know her grandfather a bit before he passed, which was fantastic, and he was an amazing human being. And if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be where we are.
Yeah.
And which side were you? Were you the Dolan or the Maloney?
Yeah, so I'm a Dolan. I kept it as my middle name. So I'm Kathleen Dolan Tobiasson. And I have the pleasure of continuing to work with my husband, who's one of the partners of the agency, as well as my brother. PJ Maloney works at the office. And then my mom and dad keep trying to retire, but we aren't letting them. My grandfather started the insurance agency the year that I was born in the front room of my parents' house in Westborough. And interestingly enough, it's the house on the corner of Flanders Road. The house used to be where Julio's Liquors is right now, and they owned all of that property. And so the Colangelos played an important role in starting of Dolan and Maloney Insurance. So when we first opened a storefront, it was right above where Tatnick Bookstore is right now.
Oh, yes. And then you moved over to the location on Route 9.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I was in middle school at the time when we made the big move over to the exciting new office space on Route 9. And Patrick and I live about half a mile in the other direction. So we have a pretty awful commute, because lots of times I don't even get to hear a song come on the radio. And my car never warms up between our house or the time we make it to the office.
Well, that's hardship.
It honestly.
You should get hardship pay for that, because it's very difficult to drive when you're cold.
I'll complain to my boss.
Yeah.
Family. Now, the other two partners are PJ, which is for Paul Jr. of the Dolan.
Of the Maloney's.
Of the
Maloney
Maloneys, too. Oh, that's right. And then it's so amazing how everyone is so integrated that
true.
it's hard to tell who's who. There's no hierarchy displayed. And then there's Tom. And Tom is your brother.
Yep, exactly. And he's a Tom Jr. After my dad, Tom Sr.
Okay. Now, before we get to Patrick's role, when you were younger in school, you came to the office to start helping out. And I'm sure that was a way for your parents to keep an eye out on you when you got out of school, but also it gave you some experience in that field. But that's not what you went to study when you went to college. So tell us how that early experience, then college, and then coming back all came to happen.
Yeah, so I definitely spent more than a couple of hours filing papers, and that's something Patrick can relate to as well. And when I lived in Westborough, I swore I would grow up and leave and never come back and have nothing to do with insurance because it just didn't seem like a very sexy occupation, I guess. So in undergrad, I had a scholarship to a small liberal arts school. I chose it because they had a wonderful writing program. And that's, when you're 18, a great way to make a decision. And then I met Patrick and gave up my scholarship and transferred to SUNY Oswego, a tiny school north of Syracuse. I'm sure you didn't know that there was anything north of Syracuse.
No.
There's not much there. But we were both theater majors in undergrad. And my first job after graduating with my bachelor's was working for the Manhattan Opera Company at their summer stock theater in New York. And I worked at least 60 hours a week.
To clarify that not New York, Richfield Springs, New
Yes.
York.
So in central New
Okay.
York.
Way, way, way up.
It's less expensive for them to make and store the costumes in central New York than it is to do that in Manhattan, where property and things like that are so expensive. But the costumes I made were on Broadway and were even on the films that toured for Pirates of Penzance.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you went from working after school in an office filing and said,
It's
I'm
not for
going to
me.
go off to school. And then Patrick enters your life and you change everything. Now, you met not in college because you moved to go with him.
Kind of a little bit in college. I was coming back. I was in the Air Force, the Air National Guard, and my roommate was dating a woman who I went to high school with. And I was coming back from training, and I had heard about Kate. And it was funny because I'm on the call, and I'm single, of course. And I asked him as well, is she single? And it was great. He had a great pregnant pause. He's like, she would have nothing to do with you. I'm like, oh, okay, that's great, buddy. Thanks, dude. And I got home, and I met her, and I looked at him and said, well, you're wrong.
Great.
So that worked out well.
And so it was kismet, that
Yeah.
instant, and off you went to college. And interesting, theater and insurance. But I do see the response to that because, and you having been an English teacher, that connection when you walk in, and I saw it with both Tom and PJ, because, I have a background in education, so I'm always watching how people interact with me. There is a certain warmth that comes from being in that office space. And it's not artificial, it's not because I've gone in there to talk about putting up a sign for the Duck Derby for my husband who was in the Lions Club, and it was open arms, sure, of course. I came to you when the library was doing a golf tournament, and you were right there and being
My kids
interested.
loved that
That was
mini
fun.
golf tournament. That was so fun.
Yes. And it was, all because of your and others' kindness. And then finally, when I got to know the office, that it was real people dealing with real people.
Yeah.
I went to talk to you about some of the decisions I had made in buying insurance, and you gave me really good advice and steered me in the right direction with your company. So theater and connecting with people and education and knowing how to do it is part of the reason that you're so comfortable here today. Because people you think in insurance, they're not really socialized into being advertising and on television. So we like to see that there's behind the scenes, they're as charming as both of you are, but yet there's that humor that comes off in that billboard. Now, whose idea was that?
Originally, it was mine, but I don't have the time to do it, and I asked Kate, do you think it's okay? Would you do it? And she took it and ran with it and made it her own.
So Patrick did start and tried to share a little bit of humor, but you had a lot of insurance, other stuff up there. And after graduation, Patrick, we were living while I was working for the opera, and you got an assignment with the military, and you were going to go to Iraq. So we decided to move back to Westborough so that I wouldn't have to be alone while you were overseas. And that was when you started working at the office. Yeah. And I ended up getting a job at Westborough High School working as a paraprofessional. And then I went on to get my master's degree in the psychology of education. And I was a teacher for 15 years, but found that it was really hard to be a teacher and take care of our kids. So I left and was doing some freelance writing. And then during COVID, all the magazines shut down. So I kind of told you that you had to hire me at the office. I didn't really let you say yes or no.
The advantages of being the wife, right?
Sure, but honestly, like Tommy and PJ couldn't have been more supportive about it, and kind of recognizing some of my skills that I had developed as a teacher, but also in my freelance writing jobs. And you guys let me kind of have some autonomy and freedom with social media and with the billboard a little bit. And one of the kids who I did theater with when I was at Westborough High, I'll give a shout out to Jamie Rubenstein. We had a nice chat, and we talked about how, like, I think what's really important to us is that, like, playfulness in life, in everything that we do. I call it embracing the goat. But goats aren't afraid to leap. They just jump without fear. They have very soft feet and don't leave footprints. Yes. And if you've ever done goat yoga or been to a petting zoo, you can see they're very social, curious, and definitely have a sense of humor. And Jamie helped me kind of think about what message we wanted to share in our social media and our presence in town. And I think in our conversations with him, that was really where the dad jokes idea kind of more came to fruition. So I'll let you have a piece of it, I guess. And it's been fun and entertaining, but also I think, like, in our lives with our kids and as we move through town, and I try to embrace the goat, and not Tom Brady, but like that playful goat, and have fun and be playful in whatever it is that we do.
Yes. Now, thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
You are a partner now. When you came into the company, you bought into the family enterprise of the Dolan and Mahonies. Where is your name?
Oh, it's not there.
Right.
Definitely not there. They charge by the letter. You kidding me?
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. No, we had the opportunity, and when we bought it in 2017, they asked if I wanted to add my name to the door, and as a tongue-in-cheek joke, I said, no, someday somebody's going to be really angry and they're going to want to talk to an owner, but they're not going to ask for a Tobiasson. They're going to ask for a Dolan or a Maloney. But that's a nice joke, but that's not the reason. The reason is it's already established, it's already there, and my ego really doesn't need to have my name on the door. I know I'm an owner, and the people who come in know I'm an owner, and the way I operate, I don't have any reason to have to change anything. Yeah.
And I think that that's a tribute to the atmosphere that you feel, because everyone there except PJ is either related by birth, related by marriage, has their wife working there or their husband working there. And those are a couple of things I want to get into in just a minute. And so that being so open and being able to express yourself as to, no, that doesn't bother me, or feeling that they would be open enough if you said, I'm going to need about 12 more letters to put up there. But there is, again, that feeling when you walk in. And what I want to know is, when you get together in a meeting, now, I know that Tom's wife helps with the accounting that your mother used to do, right? And so now she's taken over that. You have your brother and your husband working there. And then there's Paul Jr., PJ, who's the lone wolf there that's has no one that he's related to by blood or marriage.
Sometimes
but
he
he's
gets
like
to be
family.
or like a mediator, maybe
Right.
sometimes.
It's really
And
unfair,
so,
but
Yeah.
that's a lot he's got.
but I want to know how it is to work with not only your husband, but your brother.
So it's funny because I work with every single in-law I have,
Oh my goodness.
all of them, and my wife, and we vacation together as well.
Oh.
So yeah, we have a pretty good dynamic.
Yeah.
So your mother and father are still
They're
involved.
still active.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that in our conversations, I can really trace it back to my grandfather. I get like verklempt when I talk about him because he was such a special human in my life, and he had a wonderful sense of humor and such an interesting story, being part of America's Greatest Generation. So he went to Harvard before graduating from Annapolis to serve in World War II and again later. But his tone when he met you was really accepting. He did tell you wouldn't be able to sell insurance until you had gray hair on your head.
Right.
Maybe that's why you've got that haircut.
I'm never going to have gray hair on my head.
But he would appreciate the irony of that.
Yep.
And when he met my mom, my mom first got engaged to my dad, she said to my grandfather, "What should I call you?" And he said, "Oh, just call me Dad." And that's really like in my mom's heart. My grandfather was always like another father to her. And I appreciate that. And I know that my parents have worked to include you in our family and in their hearts. And it isn't always easy, I think, having adult children, and certainly it's not sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns. But I think what I always feel is this overarching sense of gratitude, of being able to collaborate together and put our family first. This week, my kid forgot his lunch. And I forgot my lunch all the time, and my mom and dad would drive it for me. And I rolled my eyes and got in the car and dropped my kid his lunch off. And Mary, it was a beautiful day. It was like 75 degrees, and it was 10:30 in the afternoon. And
Never let people out of the office on a nice day. They don't come back.
Oh.
So the school's right next to where I keep my horse. So I called my husband, my boss, and I said, "Hey, can you cover for me for another 30 minutes?" And I went and I snuggled with my horse and fed him some carrots and let him have some extra scratches. And I stayed late at the office and made up the time. And, I still got my job done. But being able to, first of all, take care of my kids, but then also to feed my soul and what makes me happy. I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't work with you and Tommy and PJ, who, as owners and partners, really prioritize putting family first. And people talk about how maybe being an insurance agent isn't very sexy. And I would agree. Like, it's a pretty good way to stop a conversation is to tell somebody that you sell insurance. But we have a wonderful life where we get to go to all the events in town, and I get to take an extra 30 minutes in the middle of the day to feed my horse carrots if time allows, and it doesn't always. But that's such a gift, and that outweighs, I think, for us, the hiccups of having those family stories and histories that do come to the table and are present in every conversation.
Now, is the staff that's in the office that I met is the in-house people.
Yep.
And each of you has a specialty. I know yours is the business side of getting insurance for companies.
Yep.
PJ mentioned that his interest differed, and so did Tom. So how did you come to decide? Was it in a meeting? Did you say, okay, what are you good at?
It's a good question.
It really just happened organically. When I first started, I started in, I want to say 2007, and I had no natural network, I had no artificial network, I had no network whatsoever. Everyone I knew either worked at the agency or already bought insurance from the agency. So my father-in-law said, you can make cold calls, and I explained how I wouldn't do that, and it was great because he goes, "Oh, well, it was nice knowing you." You know, it's a nice joke. But I started writing handwritten letters as fast and as hard as I could to everybody in Westborough, and that worked. It got attention, and they came to me. And over time, I've always wanted that next step. So whatever I've done as a career, I've always said, okay, what's that next step above where I am right now, and how do I achieve that? So naturally, I went from writing small policies and realized, okay, homeowner policies, I can help somebody, a bigger family, I can help more people with homeowner policies. And then I realized that if I help a business, I'm helping every employee and the homeowner and the auto and the kids. So it had a natural trickling effect. So I decided that that's where I was going to focus, is starting to work toward more commercial accounts where they're a lot more complicated and I can do a lot more proactive and active work. Unfortunately, with homeowner policies, unless something happens, we don't get to connect as much as I'd like to. So because I like to be out and talking to people, I like to connect, it just made it a natural fit for me to go into the more commercial side of the business. That doesn't mean I'm not doing the personal line side. It just means of the three partners, if there's a commercial issue that comes up, I'm the person who chimes in to help make the decision and help find the solution.
I think it makes us stronger too as a team. We had somebody call last week who was a referral, somebody who I had met in networking, and as we were talking about her insurance needs, I realized that she wasn't necessarily the best fit for you and for me. And we did an introduction to PJ because I said, you know what, like his style of communication, it's not significantly different from ours, but it just aligns better with hers. And Tommy sent me 2 of his clients this week because he was like, you know what, Kate, like this is your wheelhouse. You frankly, like I just have been churning that stuff in a way that Tommy hasn't had the time to be as up to date in because he's focusing on the business. And it's lovely to have a team and be able to have specialties that definitely grow organically, but also I think make the whole stronger. That's what makes like a team fun, right?
If we were all doing exactly the same thing, why would we need each other?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make sense. You need to have somebody filling in your weaknesses and leaning on your strengths, and that's what we're able to do for one another. And it's nice that we didn't have to have somebody come in and say, okay, you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, because then we all have inner childs, and my inner child will be like, screw you, buddy, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do something else. Just because of the natural internal adolescence that just doesn't ever really, really go away. So to be allowed to grow into it, that just made it that much stronger.
Now, there was an issue you told me in private about the offices.
Oh yeah, it's super exciting. It's a high drama situation. I think there's always like some hierarchy and some things that children like to squabble about. Growing up, I had the biggest bedroom in the house, and my brother really coveted it. It was a point of contention. And then ironically, when I left, he stayed in his smaller room. So it's funny how things happen, but your office has been moved to actually, I think you've been in almost every room in the building.
Just about.
But now you have the suite with the private bathroom.
I do.
But
I only have cold water. So it's, all right, balance it out. I only have cold water.
They keep you in your place.
Yes.
And when you were right next to me, we found that, Mary, I have to confess, I was being a little bit too reliant on you. I like it when I can just like holler across the hall and pretend that we're back in college. I'm like, Patrick, what am I supposed to do for this? And that turns out was not actually helpful.
No.
So now PJ is right next to me, and I have to stand up and ask you questions. It's really emotional.
And walk over.
Yeah.
And then Tom, your brother's on the second floor.
Yes.
He is, which is interesting too. And but I like that Becky decided to move up there with him, and they kind of have their like financial powerhouse going on up there. But it also worked for the flow of the office a little bit better. And I think, again, it's as we organically grow, we have to continue to adjust, whether that's like moving and giving up our coveted office spaces, thanks, Tommy, or changing and evolving what our specialties are. I've had to evolve a lot in the last 7 months. I think my job has changed more than anybody else's. I would argue. I don't know if you'd agree.
I'm not brave enough to disagree with you.
Right, and that's one of the conflicts of working side by side with your husband, and that includes Tom and his wife Becky,
And my parents too.
and your parents, that you bring those issues home.
Sometimes.
I think some people probably do. And I'm not saying we leave them at work, but actually what we have scheduled every day is an hour where we sit down and talk with each other. I call it cocktail hour. Alcohol is not necessarily involved or needed.
What?
So it's plenty of times somebody just has a seltzer in their hand, and they're not even hard seltzers. But before I start cooking dinner, we sit down and talk to each other. And sometimes it's to complain about our days. And I always say, like, hey, I like to talk to my husband about my really awful work day. And sometimes last night I had a meltdown and I said, I'm talking to my husband right now, and I might let my supervisor know about this meltdown. I might not. Because that we need to have those boundaries and those roles. And we also, one of the things that used to happen, especially when we were younger, because Patrick started at the office. How old were you?
22, 23, 23.
So your frontal cortex was definitely not fully developed as a human. And stubborn, maybe.
Oh, through and through. Yeah.
So you would say, I had this argument with your dad, or I can't believe your dad said, and then your brother did. And that automatically put me in a very defensive position.
Sure.
So now when we talk about office stuff, we call my dad Senior and my brother's Tom. And again, knowing like as humans, we're sometimes armchair therapists as spouses. But sometimes I talk to my supervisor because I'm married to him.
And we're not insulated from it either. Sometimes her supervisor does something stupid, and her husband finds out about it.
Yeah, that is true.
And the fight we have to have is very one-sided.
Yes.
But I have to be honest. I think that since you've become my supervisor and we started having these like 1 hour meetings 7 days a week, I think our marriage, our relationship, and our jobs are 1,000 times better.
Sure.
No,
I agree.
you're better.
Yes. Well, from experience, my sisters went into business together running and operating daycare centers and nursery schools. One was a nurse and the other had a doctorate in early childhood. And they had their business together for 12 or 15 years. And they haven't spoken in 39 years after. So it doesn't always work out as wonderfully as it did here at this particular place. Because, they're very different personalities and they brought with them all their childhood conflicts. And it was a difficult time. And it changed the dynamic of the family. And then I saw my husband who took over his parents' business because they begged him and it wasn't something he wanted to do. And so he said, I'll do it for a while. But all his sisters worked there and his aunt. And it was very upsetting when everything would go, when somebody wasn't working up to their potential, it became a family issue. And then there was a family meeting with mom and dad. And I don't see that here. So it's probably your childhoods, probably your attitudes about life, but there is a warmth when you walk in. And I've talked to everyone privately and they, you can't fool a teacher. When you're talking about someone, there's a little twitch in your eye if you're trying to say something that you don't really mean. And there's a heartfelt piece there that makes me, as a customer, want to be part of that particular thing. But I wanted to read to you what I read online that is your mission statement, as soon as I can find it after the joke. It was about your responsibility to the community. And you said you wanted to give them the expertise that they deserved. You wanted to be trained so you could be the expert, and you wanted to have them feel like they were being cared for. And I think those two things in people's minds are incongruent with insurance in particular. That wanting to be caring for people. And I remember Tom saying to me that he wants to be there in the worst moment of a person's life to help them. And I know he has a degree in psychology, and I assume that others have that similar background, that there's this connection to the person. And so that's important for, and I never thought of that this person who was taking care of my insurance was going to be there when something catastrophic happened.
Absolutely.
And usually you don't even see them. You would get a bill and you'd write a check, or in the old days, showing my age. It's a child. The insurance man came to your house to collect the money and just make sure and say, is everyone good? Now, when I was a kid, I didn't understand what that meant. They just wanted to make sure no one was on their deathbed, and they'd have to intervene and do something about insurance. But this seems to be that perfect balance from the large corporate configuration to the homespun, small but mighty, GOAT, which also stands for greatest of all time, so remember that, of two families coming together and creating another family that's part of the larger community.
Right.
So I'd love to thank your parents, of both of you, for creating such and bringing up such open and enthusiastic people that makes the town a better place to live in.
We also believe in better living through therapy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, doesn't everyone?
I hope so.
I think that should be one of the things we all check off. But yes, and I really appreciate your coming here, and I look forward to coming in to get some more donations to something, or passing on my joke books that I'm given by students, my middle schoolers for a holiday, my birthdays at the holidays. So they say, we have gotten a new book for you. And then I read it and laugh with them, and then I bring it over to you and see them up on the screen. So thank you both for coming with us today to take us down that journey of how the merger took place, both in your personal lives and in your business lives. And perhaps one of your children, or one of PJ's or one of Tom's, they have girls, and maybe they would like to join the force when they're old enough and maybe not need as much therapy.
Hope so.
Yeah, I think I love that, and if they want to, the door is always open. That's something we work towards, and I think one thing that PJ has helped us really grasp onto, and it's something that rings true for us, is the most generous interpretation.
Whatever someone says, whatever someone does, if you take it negatively, there's something inside that is actually the internal compass that you're shifting it in some way. But if you can take that, your ego aside, your emotions aside for a second, give every single person the most generous interpretation of what they're trying to do. They're not trying to hurt you. They're actually always trying to help you. You will react to anything far more positively than if you were to take it just as face value, because your emotions add to the layer of the bias of what you believe is being said.
Well, on that wonderful therapy note, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoy your
Thank you.
kaleidoscopes. For those who like the GOAT, and there's some for your children and
Appreciate
your
it.
colleagues. Oh, by the way, did I ask you about how many people you have working outside of the office?
We have a team working remotely of,
It's like
I want to say
12.
24 actually.
24 people that I didn't even get to meet.
Oh, it wasn't kind of commercial lines.
Yeah.
So thank you to them for helping with, I know whenever I call, they're always so willing to put me through to whomever I needed to make sure this interview could come about. But so tell them I appreciate them as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you again, and I thank all of you for tuning in today and enjoying our discussion with the dynasty, perhaps the new succession, but in a positive way. And thank you for joining us.